So today we're going to be making buttercream flowers, and these are wonderful for decorating on cakes, cupcakes, pedophores, you name it, basically most anything. And we're going to be using the buttercream from our vanilla Italian buttercream recipe. If you want to know how to make that, go ahead and click in the upper right hand corner link on the screen right now. You need several different tools in order to make these flowers. When I first started making them, I had a very hard time getting them to continue to rise up. And this tool is great for you when you're just beginning out. You can see it's got this nice point to it. So it creates that tip that you need, that you will make when you're making it onto the regular nail, as they call it. But this is a great beginner's tool that you can use. The only trick is that when you're taking the flower off, if you just lift it straight up, it's going to be a huge mess. So you actually have to lift it and turn the nail as you lift it, and just lift it that way. Otherwise, like I say, you're going to lose all of your height that you had gained from this artificial tip that you're using here. Another tool that you're going to need are these, they're called nails, and they come in a lot of different sizes and varieties. And you know, it's one of those things that's whatever suits you best. I like I like these the best. Just because I usually end up using this one, which is slightly larger. You can get the metal ones in a larger size as well, but I mean, I bought this set and so I use them most often. Another tool that you're going to need are piping bags. You can buy these disposable ones if you don't want to deal with as much mess up, or you can buy reusable silicone ones. I use the reusable silicone ones more often simply because less environmental impact, but I wanted you to be able to see the inside of the piping bag really well in this particular instance, so I am using the clear disposable ones. You're also going to need some of these connector tips, and again, these are very inexpensive. You can buy them at the store, and if you buy a set of piping tips, usually it comes with a couple of these, so you won't have to buy them separately. You're also going to need your tips. Now, the tips can come in different sizes depending on how big you want your flowers to be. Now, obviously, this is a much larger tip than, say, this one. But if you look at them, they're essentially the same. They're just different sizes. This one is for making nice large flowers. This is for making smaller ones. And these are for making roses. That's the great thing with these, is they make beautiful roses. And as you can see, they come in different sizes. I have mostly Wilton tips. This is the 104, which is sort of a medium-sized one, the 102, which is a smaller one, and the 125, which makes the big gigantic ones. And these actually all came in one set that you can buy either at your local craft store or online. And then you're also going to need a tip for making the leaves. I like this one, but there's a lot of different ones, and you can pick whichever one you like the best. This is the Wilton 70. And then for making the mums, you're going to want to use this tip. It's the Wilton 81. This one did not come in the kit, so I had to purchase it separately, but it's a great one as well. And it was pretty inexpensive. I think it was $2.50, something like that. So very inexpensive. You're also going to need, I don't know what the technical name is for them, so I just call them flower scissors. And these are also available at your local craft store or online. And when I bought these, it actually came in a set of several, so that was great. Then I have an offset spatula, and I use that for another specific task with coating a little bit of extra food dye on the side to have a highlight color, which I'll show you that in just a little bit. Of course, a spatula for mixing everything together. And you need your food dye. You would think I was getting endorsed by Wilton, but I'm not. And then I like the gel dye. It works really well. The one thing I have noticed is that when you use it on the vanilla Italian buttercream, it takes more of it to get a deeper, richer color than it does with the American buttercream. Something about the difference between having the meringue base versus the powdered sugar base. I guess it sticks better to the powdered sugar because it takes a lot less of this to get a deeper color when you're using it on the American buttercream versus the Italian buttercream. My husband is a very handy man, and so I had him put this together for me, which is essentially just a stand for the nails. And it makes it easier so you're not having to try and hold everything the whole time. And he drilled out 2 different sizes, so one fits one size, one fits the others, and it's just not necessary, but makes life easier. So those are all the tools that you need in order to get everything together and make your flowers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make some roses. And in order to do that, like I said, you need your tips. So I'm going to use the medium size tip today, which is this one, the Wilton 104. And then we're going to use this nail because it's a medium size. Actually, we'll use this nail because it's a medium size rose. And what we need to do is go ahead and mix up our buttercream with a little bit of food dye. One thing I do highly recommend, just because it gets everywhere, is to go ahead and use a pair of gloves when you're doing this, because like I say, the food dye tends to get everywhere, especially when you're clumsy like me. So I've got a little bit of buttercream. Now this was buttercream that I had left over. I had frozen it and let it thaw. And by the time you're mixing in your food dye, it is perfectly creamy and smooth and ready to go. So I just use a very fancy method there of getting out a toothpick and getting out some of the food dye and then just rubbing it on there. Because these are pink flowers, I don't want it particularly intense. So that should be plenty of food dye for this particular flower. But like I say, I do recommend wearing the gloves when you do this because that dye, I don't know about you, but for me, it tends to stain my hands really easily. So you're just going to go ahead and mix this up. Yeah, this is going to be a nice, subtle, light pink, sort of a pastel pink, which I like in the roses. I'm only going to make a few today, so I didn't get out a whole bunch of the buttercream in order to do this. Okay, so there you go. You have it all mixed in, looking pretty, and as you can see, it's that nice creamy smooth texture. It only takes a second to mix it together once you've taken it out of the freezer to have it be nice, easy texture for you. One trick that I have learned over the years is to use a glass in order to fill up the piping bags. It makes it easier, a little less mess and fuss. There's different techniques that you can use to fill a piping bag, but honestly, for what we're doing, why deal with more struggle? So in addition to kneading your piping bag with the colored buttercream, you're going to want to fill one up and put the connector tip on it, but no actual piping tip is necessary at this point. And you're just going to fill it with some plain white buttercream. We'll see if I guessed right. I always guess wrong the first time when I knock off a little bit of the end of the reusable bags. Hey, I got that one right. Go figure. All right, So you're going to want to put that in there as well as your piping tip. So you put the connector in there at the bottom and get it nice and secure. Add your tip to the top and then just secure it with the screw, the nut. What you're going to do, if you want to add a highlight color to the flowers, what you can do is take your offset spatula or a paintbrush, or I guess even just a Q-tip, anything that you can think of that is convenient and handy, and you just put a little bit on the end, and you're going to paint it on the inside of the bag along one side. And then on the opposite side, do the exact same thing. And this is not exact, so if it's not perfect, don't fret. But essentially you can see it's got a little bit of extra coloring, so it'll highlight that when you're piping the flowers out. And once you've done that, use your glass and you fill up the bag to whatever's comfortable for your hands. I have small hands, so I tend to put a little bit less in there than somebody else might. The other thing to keep in mind, especially when you're beginning at this, in addition to having small hands, I have very warm hands. And so that means that the buttercream, the more I handle it, it's going to get melting. It will melt and it will get softer and it won't hold the form as well. So you're going to want to make sure that you try and not put too much in at a time, especially when you're beginning and you're a little more clumsy with it, so that it melts on you. But if it starts to get a little melty on you, all you have to do is put it in the fridge, pop it in the fridge for a few minutes, and it'll firm back up again. So it doesn't usually take that long. I'll pop it in when I first started out, I would pop it in the fridge for like 5 minutes, and that would be plenty. Okay, so with your bag that you have the white buttercream in, you're just going to want to make a few little dots. And this is where you're going to put your completed roses. It makes it easier to pick up and put them back down again onto your cake. And I don't actually waste this buttercream. Once I have placed them on the cake, what I'll do is I'll usually scoop this up, put it into a small bowl, and mix it in with the green dye in order to make the leaves. So what you're going to want to do is you have your nail, and you can either do it straight up or at an angle, it doesn't really matter, but you just want to put a nice little dollop so it looks like a cone essentially. Now, because I didn't bother with the other attachment, a simple round attachment, because I didn't feel like cleaning another tip, it's not perfectly even, but that's okay. It's nothing to worry about. So this is where this block comes in handy. You can just set that on there. So you're going to take your bag that you have your buttercream in, and fold it over and apparently fight with it like crazy. And then I just use this paddle to smooth it all down. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do this. It's just a trick I learned along the way. It makes life a little easier. So what you're going to do is squeeze out some of the buttercream until you see that darker edge. There it is. And I don't know how well you can see that, but you can see that that darker edge is coming through there. And if it's not on the edge, what you can do is loosen up your tip, turn it, and then tighten it again so that it does show up on the edge. There we go. And then what you're going to do is you take hold on to your nail, and for these first few ones, you're just going to do a little arch, sort of like a little miniature rainbow. And you're going to do that, and then about halfway across from the start to the end of that first arch, you're going to do a second one. And then you're going to do a third one. And you just sort of turn the nail in your hand as you're doing that. All right, so that's the start of your rose. You put the wide part of the tip at the bottom and the narrow part of the tip at the top. And after you've done those first 3 arches, you're going to place it at I guess it's about a 90-degree angle, approximately 1/2 to 1/3 of the way through from the previous arch. And you're just gonna go across like that. So as you are doing this, you're gonna wanna turn and move your piping bag at the same time. So again, about halfway through or so, you go across and then just do the same. And you just keep building it, from there. Now this is a good example of how sometimes things don't go exactly as you plan. Just squish it up there, it's okay. So as I get further down, I put it at a steeper angle. And so you can see it's kind of flopped over a little bit, and it's not 100%, but guess what? That's a beautiful rose, and nobody's gonna know the difference once you get it off of this. So then you just take your little scissors that you had, and you lift it off of there, and you can see I didn't go all the way to the bottom, and then you just gently place it on the dot that you had on your mat. I use these silicone mats because they're reusable, washable. You can use parchment paper. You can just put it on a plate for that matter. It doesn't matter. But I like these mats. They're just easy to use. And when you're grabbing the flower, you just do it like that. I don't go all the way tight, completely closed. You bring them to about like that and lift it straight off. And again, because I'm a waste not want not kind of gal, I just reuse the bottom part of that and build up another tip. This again is where you have your pyramid of buttercream that you're using, and I was having a very hard time with that because it's not 100% stable since it's buttercream, whereas the metal, it's not going anywhere. So instead of using this, you can just build a flower on it instead. And so let's actually try doing one that way. I haven't done one on this for a little while, so this should be interesting. So you just start off with your 3 arches, and that's about a 45-degree angle that you have going there. And then you do 3, and then work your way around. I have read a lot of books that say you're supposed to do it in specific numbers. The first layer's 3, the next layer's 5, the next layer's 7. I just put them together so that they look pretty. Now with the Italian buttercream, because it's a creamier, lighter, fluffier, less stable buttercream, the result of that is going to be that you have a little bit of this thing poking out. If you were doing it with the American, you wouldn't have that. So what you're going to do if you use one of these nails is take your scissors, open them up wide, and then start to close them. And as you close them, you lift it straight up and twist the nail, and that way you can maintain your height. So it's a good tool to use when you're first starting off, but I definitely recommend getting to this method as quickly as possible because it's easier, and you have the extra stability that maintains with inside from this buttercream. So you got 1 arch, And this is pretty much at a 90-degree angle to the thing. 2 arches and 3 arches, and that starts your center bud of your rose. And then at a slightly higher degree of angle, twisting as you squeeze gently, you're going to do the next bud, next petal, I guess it would be, and then another one, and then another one. And then at a greater degree of angle as you get further down into the flower. And I usually go a little bit further each time, initially starting off pretty close to that formula of 1/3 the way through the previous petal, but it's not 100%. So there we go, we have 3 different flowers. Leaves, fortunately, are another one of those things that are not very difficult to do. They're fairly simple, but they just take a little practice, as does everything else. They just take a little practice, as does everything else, unfortunately. It would be so nice if we could just pick something up and be perfect at it the first time. But then there's reality. What you're gonna do is just put your tip down onto the silicone mat and just give it a slight little curl, and then push the ends together again. And again, if you do it fast, you might end up with a fatter leaf, or you can do it slower and end up with a longer leaf. So, and to show you the larger one, putting the long parts of the tip from here to here on the mat, little squeeze, and push the ends together. So at the very end though, you want to give it less pressure so that it tapers off to the end. And as I said before, these are great fillers, really nice for doing things around your other flowers and to fill in around the rest of the space. And it's also wonderful to use as a part of a vine and that sort of thing. So the more you do them, the more you get used to it, and you can see the different shapes and different styles of leaves depending on how much you shake it or how much you just go straight back. So if you just go straight back, you can get a leaf that has minimal waves to it. I like the waves, so I tend to do the handshake, but you don't have to. It's whatever you prefer. You are the artist. And there you go.